As we enter the later stages of life, have you ever wondered where you might find peace and happiness? Should you follow the age-old tradition of living with your children and grandchildren, or should you carve out your own path, maintaining independence in your golden years? The stories below offer fresh perspectives that touch the soul, encouraging reflection on what it truly means to live a fulfilled life in old age. Let's listen, feel, and discover our own answers to finding genuine peace and happiness in our later years. The first story, living with your children. My parents had 2 sons and always envisioned living with one of us when they grew older. My younger brother even chose his wife based on how well she would get along with our parents, believing this would ensure harmony in a shared household. I witnessed my brother end several relationships because our parents disapproved, often citing reasons like not being traditional enough or lacking domestic skills. Eventually, at the age of 32, my brother married a woman who met all of our parents' expectations. Everyone believed their life together would be harmonious, as initial impressions were positive. However, this harmony was short-lived. Conflicts arose from the generational gap between my parents and my brother's family. My parents valued daily family meals, but my brother and his wife found it difficult to maintain this due to their professional and social commitments. This led to feelings of resentment from my parents, who felt disrespected and neglected. Tensions escalated when my sister-in-law had a baby. My mother, relying on traditional practices, clashed with my sister-in-law's preference for modern, science-based childcare methods. The relationship between my mother and sister-in-law became increasingly strained, resulting in a constant undercurrent of conflict. As the situation worsened, my brother often found himself in the middle, struggling to mediate between his wife and parents. Frustration boiled over into arguments, and eventually my brother and his wife decided to move out. Though not all families experience such conflicts, living together can sometimes lead to misunderstandings and tensions, especially when generational differences come into play. On the other hand, there are families like Mr. Q's, where multi-generational living has been a source of joy and comfort. Mr. Q and his wife live with 18 children and grandchildren in a close-knit community. Though they have separate kitchens, every evening they gather for meals, sharing food and conversation, strengthening their bonds. Even family members who live elsewhere consider the parents' home their true refuge, a place to recharge after long, exhausting workdays. Every week, the family holds a gathering to reinforce their connection and share their lives. Mr. Q believes that the greatest reward of living with his children and grandchildren is the peace of mind that comes from seeing them happy and being able to offer daily guidance and support. For many elderly parents, the desire to live with their children stems from the need for emotional closeness and the comfort of family life, especially as health declines and social circles shrink with age. The fear of loneliness in old age is very real. However, if the children are not genuinely caring, proximity won't necessarily improve the relationship. Some older people prefer to live nearby rather than in the same house, allowing them to maintain independence while staying close enough for regular visits and care. This arrangement can reduce intergenerational conflict while still providing the support and connection that both parents and children need. In the end, the choice of where to live in old age is deeply personal and should be guided by what brings the most peace and happiness to each individual. Finding comfort in independence. Mr. V and Mrs. N are parents of 2 sons, yet they surprised many when they chose not to live with either of them. Despite both sons residing and working in Hanoi, when it came time for each to marry, Mr. V and Mrs. N gently encouraged them to establish their own households. Mrs. N, having once been a daughter-in-law herself, understood all too well the challenges of living under one roof with in-laws. This experience shaped their belief that once a son gets married, he should have his own home. 3 years ago, when their younger son got married but hadn't yet saved enough to buy his own place, he asked to stay with his parents temporarily. Mrs. N agreed, but with a condition they could only stay for 3 months. If they hadn't purchased a house by then, they needed to find a rental. It's not about being harsh, Mrs. N explained, but about thinking ahead for their sake. Different generations have different lifestyles, and living together for too long can inevitably lead to conflict. Now, their elder son lives about 10 kilometers away, convenient for his daily commute, while the younger one purchased an apartment right next to his parents' home. On weekends, the entire family gathers at Mr. V and Mrs. N's house for meals, laughter, and time together. When asked if they might consider moving in with their children as they grow older, Mrs. N confidently responded, "We plan to sell this 4-story house and use half the money to buy a smaller apartment, something easier to manage. The rest will go toward our retirement. If we become too frail, we'll hire help or consider a senior living community. But we won't burden our children." Similarly, Mrs. L has chosen to live independently, apart from her sons. Her 2 adult sons, both married, often urge her to move in with them, leaving behind the large family home she lives in alone. Yet Mrs. L remains steadfast. Living in the countryside, she says, "I have friends to socialize with, and I enjoy the freedom. In the city, it's just doors opening and closing day after day, with little interaction." When she visits her sons in the city, she notices the routine. They leave in the morning, return late at night, and bury themselves in their computers or phones. Their only interaction with her is a quick greeting when leaving and returning home. City life, with its constant rush and fear of strangers, doesn't suit her. Let them live their lives as they wish. She says, "While I continue to enjoy the village lifestyle, if I fall ill, I know they won't be able to care for me around the clock. My caregiver will be someone I hire, and that's fine with me. My sons can visit occasionally, and that's enough." These stories reflect a growing trend. The modern world is gradually moving away from the traditional multi-generational family model. Instead, more and more seniors are choosing to take charge of their own lives in their later years, rather than relying on their children. They prefer to live independently or close by, but not under the same roof. These parents have prepared themselves for old age, deciding early on to live separately as soon as their children start their own families. They offer support when needed, but otherwise they maintain control over their own lives, eating, traveling, socializing, and even choosing senior living communities if it suits them. And this, they believe, ensures a more fulfilling and harmonious life for everyone involved. The third story: embracing senior living in a nursing home. After her husband passed away, Mrs. M made a bold decision. She sold her home and used her pension to move into a private nursing home. This choice shocked her children, who believed it was unusual and even shameful for their mother to live in a nursing home when she had family to care for her. They feared it would reflect poorly on them, as if they were neglecting their duty to care for her in her old age. But Mrs. M calmly explained her reasoning to her children. She knew that at her age, her lifestyle no longer aligned with the busy, modern lives of her children and grandchildren. Living together, she felt, would only bring inconvenience and discomfort to both generations. She would be lonely all day in an empty house while her children were at work, and there were no neighbors her age in their urban apartment complex. In the nursing home, she found companionship with others her age, had her meals prepared for her, and her children could visit whenever they wished. This arrangement allowed both her and her children to live peacefully, knowing they were each in a place where they could thrive. Initially, her children felt guilty about her decision, but as they saw how happy and healthy she was in the nursing home, their worries faded. During holidays, Mrs. M would spend a few weeks with her family before returning to the nursing home. Whenever she visited friends still living with their children, she would share her positive experiences and even encourage them to consider the same path. Similarly, Mr. V, at 70 years old, chose to use his pension to live in a nursing home rather than follow his son to the city. His only son had moved to the city for work, married, and started a family of his own. After his wife passed away, Mr. V planned to live alone in his rural home. But his children insisted he move to the city with them. Reluctantly, he agreed, but after nearly 2 years, he felt as if he were living in a gilded cage. His days were spent in front of the TV, with no social interactions and no freedom to live as he wished. Suffering from Parkinson's disease, Mr. V one day saw a television program about nursing homes and decided to explore the option online. He realized that this could be the right environment for him, providing the care and social interaction he craved. He asked his children to let him try living in a nursing home for a few months. Though initially hesitant, they agreed. To everyone's surprise, Mr. V's health improved as he thrived in the company of others and received daily care. He then decided to permanently move into the nursing home, using his military pension to cover the costs. His children were relieved, knowing he was happy and well cared for, without the daily burden of cooking or managing his care. There was a time when sending elderly parents to a nursing home was seen as abandoning them, as a betrayal of family values. However, the reality is changing. More and more seniors are choosing to live in nursing homes. Some are alone, some have children who are too busy to provide the care they need, and some simply seek a peaceful place to enjoy their golden years. What's most important is that they are content and happy with their decision. Dear friends, deciding where to spend your later years is a deeply personal choice that varies with each family and situation. Whether you choose to live with your children or independently, the essence of senior living lies in joy, health, and maintaining the values that define your family. Parents can live together or separately, depending on what suits them best. It's not necessary to impose the traditional expectation that children must care for their aging parents at home. Sometimes, parents might find true peace and comfort in a different setting. Senior life is not about dependence on your children, but about finding peace, joy, and satisfaction in every day. Whether you choose to live with your children, alone, or in a nursing home, the most important thing is that each senior lives the life they desire, holding on to their family values and personal dignity. Remember, aging is not the end, but a new chapter filled with meaning, where you can savor every moment with true contentment and joy. Take control of your journey and live a senior life that is memorable and fulfilling.
If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time.
Part 2. If your spouse passes away first, the smartest way to live 3 things to say no to. Have you ever wondered how you would cope if you lost your spouse? Life can be unpredictable, and the loss of a partner can leave you feeling empty and directionless. But what if there were secrets to not just surviving, but thriving after such a profound loss? Join us as we uncover the inspiring stories of 3 individuals who have navigated this difficult journey and shared the most important lessons they've learned. Discover how you can find hope, independence, and happiness even after the most heartbreaking loss. Life in this world is unpredictable. You never know how far the person you love can accompany you. Miyazaki said life is like a train, and everyone can only accompany you for part of the journey. When they have to get off, you should be grateful because they have spent wonderful times with you. If someone can accompany you throughout the journey, you should be even more grateful. Having a partner when you're young and when you're old is a blessing, but not all love can last a lifetime. Some partners leave this world early due to illness or disaster. When the spouse is gone, the house becomes empty, as if life has lost its support. However, no matter how sad or painful it is, time does not stop for anyone, and the deceased will not come back to life. When your spouse dies, you have to heal yourself while living your life well. 3 experienced individuals share their personal stories to tell middle-aged and elderly friends that if your spouse leaves first, you must refuse to do 3 things to live a decent life in your later years. Doing so will make your later years comfortable and pleasant. 1. Immersing in excessive grief for too long. Imagine losing someone who has been by your side for most of your life. The emptiness is profound, and the memories can be both a comfort and a source of deep pain. Callista's story is one of heartbreak and resilience. At 67, she faced the unimaginable loss of her husband and found herself at a crossroads. How do you go on when the person you love most is gone? Callista's journey from despair to finding a new purpose in life is a testament to the human spirit's strength. Her story is not just about grief, but about rediscovering hope and learning to live again. Join us as we delve into her touching narrative and discover how even in the darkest times, there is a way to find light and meaning. 67-year-old Callista said, "When I was 64, my husband passed away. Whenever I recall the time when he just left, I still find it hard to accept. During those days, I was like a walking corpse, feeling that life was meaningless. Many times I thought I might as well follow him. I often cried myself to sleep, especially at night when I couldn't sleep for whole nights. Looking at the wide double bed where now only I lay, it was inevitable to feel sad. But every time I looked at our old photos, smiling so happily, I thought maybe I should persist a little longer. My husband wouldn't want me to live like this." No matter how sad I was, tears wouldn't bring him back. So I continued to be sad, living well, and letting him in another world feel at ease is what I should do. Callista finally figured it out. Indeed, the separation of life and death is the saddest thing in the world, but the deceased are gone, and the living continue. No matter how happy the past was or how sweet the memories, you cannot always dwell in the past and neglect the present beauty and future hopes. Learning to look forward and live well in the present is not only a duty to oneself, but also a way to let the deceased spouse rest in peace. When the spouse is gone first, stay calm, comfort yourself, take good care of your health, keep a clear mind, and not let grief overwhelm you. Slowly adjust your mindset, regain confidence, and live a self-sufficient and strong life. Cheer up, eat when you want, sleep when you can, stroll in the park, and walk around the streets. Do not rely on others. Learn to enjoy solitude with elegance and wisdom, nurturing your spiritual world and loneliness like sipping aged wine, savoring your endless life. When lonely, you can check with friends, talk about everything, and find joy in solitude. This way, the lonely later years will still be enjoyable. Dealing with the loss of a lifelong partner is one of the most challenging experiences anyone can face. Callista's story highlights why this is such an important topic to discuss and understand. Firstly, her experience shows that grief is a universal emotion that doesn't discriminate by age, background, or culture. It reminds us that feeling deep sorrow and loneliness after losing a loved one is normal and a shared human experience. This understanding can help people feel less isolated in their grief, knowing that others have gone through similar struggles. Secondly, Callista's journey from despair to finding a new purpose emphasizes the importance of resilience. Life can bring unexpected and painful changes, but her story shows that it's possible to rebuild and find meaning even after a significant loss. This message is crucial because it offers hope to those who are currently struggling. It tells them that while the pain may never fully disappear, there is a path forward that includes joy and fulfillment. Moreover, Callista's story underscores the importance of self-care and mental health. In times of profound grief, it's easy to neglect one's well-being. Callista's decision to focus on her health, find joy in small things, and reach out to friends highlights practical steps that can help others in similar situations. It encourages people to take care of themselves, seek support, and not be afraid to embrace life again. Additionally, her story speaks to the power of memories and their role in healing. Callista found comfort in looking at old photos and remembering happy times with her husband. This act of cherishing positive memories can be a powerful tool for coping with loss, allowing people to honor their loved ones while still moving forward with their own lives. Lastly, Callista's experience illustrates the importance of living in the present and looking forward to the future. It teaches us that while it's natural to grieve and remember the past, it's also vital to find new sources of happiness and purpose. This balance is essential for living a fulfilling life even after experiencing profound loss. In conclusion, Callista's story is a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. It teaches us about the importance of self-care, the healing power of memories, and the necessity of finding a balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. Her journey offers hope and practical advice for anyone facing the difficult process of grieving. 2. Over-relying on children for the rest of your life. Have you ever wondered what life is like for elderly parents living with their grown children? Do they find comfort and happiness, or does it lead to unexpected challenges and heartache? In our story, Mrs. Amber, a 65-year-old widow, shares her heartfelt journey of living with her daughter and then deciding to live alone. Her experience reveals a powerful lesson about independence and finding true happiness in your golden years. Stay with us as we dive into her story and discover why sometimes the best company you can have is your own. Experiences of Mrs. Amber. 65-year-old Mrs. Amber said, "After my spouse passed away, I lived with my daughter for many years and now I live alone again. Initially, I believed that the mutual support between parents and children was natural. I raised you when you were young and you accompany me in my old age. However, after dedicating everything to my daughter's family, what I got in return was growing disdain over time. My husband and I were both retirees. I didn't think about how to live alone, believing that we would grow old together, but a disease took my husband away, leaving me alone. My daughter had just given birth to a grandson then, and my son-in-law took me in, saying I should live with them and retire. I was grateful for their advice and comfort. Seeing my grandson, I considered him a reincarnation of my husband and dedicated all my time and energy to him, helping with household chores at my daughter's place. Initially, my daughter and son-in-law gave me some money monthly for living expenses, but later they stopped because I had my pension. As my grandson grew, my pension was not enough for the family of 4. I mentioned this to my daughter many times, but she seemed impatient, occasionally giving me some money, mostly pretending to forget. The elderly talk a lot, and living together inevitably leads to disagreements. Sometimes I couldn't help but criticize my daughter for not knowing how to live frugally, shopping online every day without saving for a rainy day. Regarding my grandson's education, my daughter and son-in-law let him develop naturally, while I believed that children should be disciplined from an early age. Over time, there was a gap between us. They spoke to me less politely and respectfully. Reflecting on my years at my daughter's place, I chose to live alone again. When I proposed returning home, they said they would miss me, but were obviously happy and relieved. It seemed my presence was a burden. They needed my help when my grandson was young, but now they could manage on their own. Back home, initially I felt lonely and idle, not busy anymore, and life was simple, but I felt empty and lost without emotional support. After a while, I learned to enjoy solitude, rediscovered some of my interests, joined calligraphy and painting classes, and community groups, making a few like-minded friends. My days are fulfilling. I realized that a life of money, leisure, and freedom is the ideal I have longed for. After my husband passed away, I finally lived the retirement life I wanted. The story of Mrs. Amber is a powerful reminder of the importance of independence and self-reliance in our golden years. As life expectancy increases, many people find themselves facing the challenge of living alone after a spouse passes away. While it might seem ideal to live with grown children, this arrangement often brings unexpected difficulties. Mrs. Amber's experience highlights several reasons why maintaining independence is crucial for elderly individuals. Firstly, living with children can lead to conflicts due to generational differences. Mrs. Amber's story shows how differing views on money, child rearing, and daily habits can create tension. This is not just a cultural issue, but a universal one. In the U.S., families often face similar challenges, where the desire for independence clashes with the need for familial support. Secondly, the sense of being a burden can be emotionally taxing. Mrs. Amber felt unappreciated and even resented after years of dedicating herself to her daughter's family. This emotional strain can lead to feelings of worthlessness and depression among elderly parents. In American culture, where independence is highly valued, the idea of being a burden can be particularly hard to bear. Thirdly, finding personal fulfillment is essential for a happy and healthy retirement. Mrs. Amber eventually discovered joy in her solitude, rediscovering hobbies, and making new friends. This highlights the importance of pursuing personal interests and staying socially active, which are key components of a fulfilling retirement. Many seniors in the U.S. find happiness in community centers, clubs, and volunteer work, all of which provide a sense of purpose and belonging. In conclusion, while living with grown children might seem like a practical solution for elderly parents, Mrs. Amber's story shows that independence often leads to greater happiness and fulfillment. Encouraging seniors to find their own path and maintain their autonomy can lead to a more satisfying and dignified retirement. This is a lesson that resonates deeply within American culture, where the pursuit of happiness and independence is a fundamental value. 3. Rashly finding a new partner or remarrying. Are you considering finding a new partner or remarrying in your later years? Before you take that step, listen to Mrs. Fong's story. At 62, she thought she found companionship after her first husband's passing, only to face unexpected challenges and heartbreak. Her experience serves as a cautionary tale for anyone thinking about remarriage in their golden years. Join us as we explore the risks and realities of elderly remarriage through Mrs. Fong's journey. You might find valuable insights that could save you from future regrets. Experiences of Mrs. Kelly. 62-year-old Mrs. Kelly said, having been through 2 marriages, my first husband died when I was 53. 3 years later, I remarried but divorced within a year. Thinking about my second marriage still pains and angers me. I want to share my experience to remind others considering remarriage. At 50, I retired, hoping to travel with my husband after his retirement, making up for lost time. Unfortunately, he died of illness before retirement. After he passed, I was in deep grief for a long time. My son, seeing me so depressed, was worried and wanted me to live with him, but I didn't want to trouble him. They were busy enough. My son then wanted to enroll me in a senior travel group to cheer me up, but I didn't want to trouble him, so I enrolled in a dance and poetry recitation class myself. There, I met my second husband, Mr. Galley. Initially, we were just acquaintances. One day, I sprained my ankle going down the stairs. Mr. Galley immediately helped me to the hospital and took care of me at home. For those few days, I couldn't attend the class, but he came over daily to help. Gradually, we got closer. 2 months later, Mr. Galley proposed, saying he liked me and wanted to live together for mutual support. I was happy but didn't agree immediately, saying I'd discuss it with my son. My son didn't oppose but suggested meeting Mr. Galley's family to see how they were. Mr. Galley agreed readily. That night, both families had dinner together. Afterward, my son advised me to observe more and not rush into marriage, but I didn't listen, thinking Mr. Galley was good enough. A few days later, we registered our marriage, and I moved into his house. Initially, we got along well. Though I did all the housework, I didn't mind as I did it before. Conflicts began when 3 old friends invited me to travel. I agreed without hesitation, but Mr. Galley was unhappy, saying no one would do the housework if I went. I felt unfair. Was I hired to do housework? That day, we argued fiercely. He said hurtful things, implying I was useless without housework. For the first time, I doubted the marriage. Returning from the trip, things got worse. Mr. Galley's son divorced, leaving a grandson with us. At first, I took care of him as my own, but he was spoiled, picky with food, throwing tantrums if displeased. After some days, I couldn't handle him. I talked to Mr. Galley, suggesting his son take the grandson. Mr. Galley opposed strongly, saying, "You're not my grandson's mother, so don't interfere." If you can't do it, stay out of it. I felt extremely wronged, finally understanding that remarriage at this age is challenging. It's hard to gain acceptance from the new partner's family. After months of enduring, I filed for divorce as I couldn't live like this anymore. Thankfully, the divorce was smooth. Reflecting now, I think living alone might be lonely, but it's better than dealing with so many problems. Understanding the challenges and risks of remarrying in later years is crucial for several reasons. Mrs. Kelly's story illustrates the potential complications that can arise from blending lives at an older age. Firstly, elderly remarriages often involve deeply ingrained habits and viewpoints that have developed over decades. These differences can make it challenging to live harmoniously. Unlike younger couples, Older individuals may find it harder to adapt to a new partner's lifestyle and expectations. Mrs. Kelly experienced this firsthand when she clashed with Mr. Gali over household responsibilities and travel plans. Such conflicts can lead to significant stress and dissatisfaction. Secondly, acceptance from a new partner's family can be difficult to achieve. Older children and grandchildren may have established routines and expectations that a new spouse disrupts. In Mrs. Kelly's case, Mr. Galley's son and grandson added unexpected strain to her new marriage. The lack of acceptance and cooperation from family members can create an environment of tension and resentment, making it harder for the marriage to thrive. Moreover, emotional readiness is another critical factor. After the loss of a spouse, loneliness and fear of the future can drive someone to seek companionship quickly. However, this rush can result in overlooking potential red flags. Mrs. Kelly's swift decision to marry Mr. Gali, despite her son's advice to observe and wait, ultimately led to disappointment and another divorce. Emotional healing and a careful evaluation of one's needs and expectations are essential before entering a new marriage. Lastly, financial and legal complications are common in elderly remarriages. Issues like inheritance, healthcare decisions, and the division of assets can become contentious. While Mrs. Kelly's story doesn't delve into these aspects, they are important considerations for anyone thinking about remarrying later in life. In conclusion, while companionship in old age is valuable, Mrs. Kelly's experience underscores the importance of careful consideration and thorough evaluation before deciding to remarry. Understanding these potential challenges can help individuals make informed decisions that lead to happier, more stable relationships. In conclusion, life after the loss of a spouse can be incredibly challenging, but it is possible to find joy and fulfillment again. By avoiding prolonged grief, excessive dependence on children, and rushing into a new relationship, you can create a rich and meaningful life for yourself. Take care of your health, engage in activities that bring you happiness, and build new connections with others. Embrace your independence and cherish the memories of your loved one, while also looking forward to new experiences. These steps can help you heal and find a new purpose. Remember, life is precious and every moment counts. By making thoughtful choices and focusing on your well-being, you can thrive even after such a significant loss. The stories of Callista, Mrs. Amber, and Mrs. Kelly show that while grief is a natural response, resilience and self-care are key to moving forward and finding light in the darkest times.
If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time.